Hi guys and gals and kittens, and welcome to the AINIRO Magic Show. So as we all know, OpenAI, they released these GPTs a couple of weeks ago on the 6th of November. Now, GPT is basically the ability to have ChatGPT interact with an API. Now, that is a kick-ass, amazingly cool feature. Now, just so happens to be that Magic is actually the perfect vehicle to actually create APIs. And in this video, I'm going to demonstrate that by actually creating an API that executes my C# code and according to some input argument, actually return something intelligent, and I'm going to connect it to my GPT. I'm going to create a GPT in OpenAI, and I am going to actually connect the GPT to my C# code. So the first thing I need is obviously C# code, so I'm going to go into create/HyperID. Notice this requires an enterprise license of an AINIRO Magic Cloud. You don't get this through professional. Why? Because, you know, the compilation and all that stuff is fairly expensive operation, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, we ask users to only do this in the enterprise plan. So now I'm going to need a module. So I'm going to call my module cs.demo, right? That is a folder name. Notice I click on that create new folder here, right? That I call it cs-demo. So now I have a folder inside of HyperID, which actually is a physical folder on disk inside of my Kubernetes pod. And then inside of this folder, I'm going to create a C# file. So I click on the new file here, and I choose a template. I'm going to choose, let's see, I might have to actually remove the filtering here because I need a file that actually isn't an example by default inside of a module. So I clicked the filter checkbox, I remove the filter, then I choose template, then I go to the bottom, I find slot.cs. I'm just going to name my file slot.cs. That's probably a fine name. And here I have C# code. And I have a template of what we refer to in Hyperlambda as a slot. And I can click Option M to maximize the code if I want to. So what should I call my slot? Get employee details, right? That's a nice name, I guess, as anything. And now I want to do a switch on input.getEx string. And then I want to do a case. Actually, let me do to lover. And then I want to do a case. Thomas input.children.add new node title CTO, and then let me do phone 90909090. That's obviously not my phone number. And then email thomas@ainiro.io. So then I want to create a couple of more switches. I want to create one for Aria, title COO 91919191 Aria. And then I want to do a third one for Tage, title CEO 92929292 and Tage. And now let's do a couple of break statements here. Break. And with a little bit of luck, this should already compile now when I save it, Alt-S or Option-S on a Mac. Then I'm going to demaximize it, Option-M or Alt-M again. And then I'm going to open up Hyperlambda Playground in a different tab. Then I'm going to click Snippets. And here we have an example snippet. It's called Compile, which actually compiles my C# code and assumes there is a slot in my code called foo. So I'm going to have to edit it slightly and change the foo guy down here, down to get employee details. Then I'm going to choose the name declaration to be Tage. Remember that we did two lovers, so it doesn't matter if we do a capital T in Tage's name here. And then I am going to make sure that it resolves to the correct file. And remember, it was in modules, and then it was in cs-demo, I think. Let's see. CS demo. Yeah, as you can see here, modules folder, CS demo. The name of the file is slot.cs. Let's save it again to make sure it's saved. So now it loads this particular file, slot.cs, and then it passes in that file as a reference in the code argument to the slot called system compile. Then it passes in a couple of references here. And the most important ones being, of course, the net standard and all that stuff. But this is the API and containing the interface declaration of the iSlot interface, which we're actually implementing here, as you can see on this particular class. So now let's do code io.file.load assembly name. Let's call it the employees, and then let's unload it as employees further down here. Now, if you want to pause the video and have a close look at what's on my screen now, you should probably do that to make sure you get everything correct. There is a little bit of messing with the syntax here, but fundamentally now I think it should work. F5, and let's see if this works. And it didn't. Compilation did not succeed. Node and no extensible method. Input. Whoops. Of course, I don't add to children. I add directly to the node itself. Let's try again. There's going to be a link in the description of this YouTube video to an article where you can find the code, so you can download it. And as you can see here now, get employee details, passing in a reference to Tage, returns the title of CEO, the phone number of 9292, blah, 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 email tage@ainiro.io. So we've now dynamically executed C# code. Now what we want to do now inside of the CS demo, we want to create an HTTP endpoint. Remember, the whole purpose of the exercise is to end up with an HTTP endpoint we can actually connect to ChatGPT's GPT as we are creating our own custom GPT. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it get employee details.get.hl. The naming convention here is crucial. First of all, ChatGPT will use the URL to determine what this method does in addition to the OpenAI specification, etc., etc. The get parts here is very important. Why? Because we want to communicate. This is an HTTP get verb, and the .hl, of course, means hyperlambda. So now I'm going to be creating this file. Now I can go back to here, and I can copy parts of this code here now that I have open in my Hyperlambda playground, and then I can just paste it in. Whoops, I forgot to click. Here. What I want to do first now, I want to create an arguments collection. I want it to take a name being of type string, right? Why? Because this declares the arguments that my particular endpoint can legally accept, implying it will become metadata to the OpenAPI specification, providing input arguments as query parameters, communicating again to ChatGPT that you can pass in a query parameter whose name is name. Then I want to provide a description, .description colon, endpoint returns the title, phone, and email for the specified employee. Why? Because OpenAI, yet again, is going to do this to semantically match my actual API endpoint towards my instructions as I'm actually consuming ChatGPT. Then I want to do i.file.load module CS demo slot.cs. I want to compile it into employees.dll. Then I want to load that IL code. This ends up becoming, if you look here now, you will actually see that this is a bunch of bytes. It's actually the assembly in raw byte format. So the assembly is never saved to disk. It's just dynamically compiled into memory, and then it is being loaded here. And this does the same thing. And here now it is loading the compiled plugin, and then it is invoking get employee details. At this point, we want to do arguments slash asterisk slash name. This expression here basically becomes a reference to this argument. And now we're done. We now actually have an HTTP endpoint, and we can go into manage. We can go into endpoints, open it in a different window, and we can search for, once this is done loading, don't start searching before because then you're not going to find it. Get-employee, And as you can see here, we have an endpoint. And as you can see here, we are returning the meta data associated with the endpoint, return the title, phone, blah, 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 etc. It returns application JSON, which is the default return type, and default accept type for an HTTP endpoint in Magic. The type is custom. That's quite irrelevant. However, if you click the little arrow here now, you can pass in, for instance, ARIA, and you can invoke it. At which point we got an error. So let's have a look in our log, open it in a different tab, and see what that particular error actually is. Object reference, not set an instant. Object, thank you very much. Get employee details, and now we return colon x colon at asterisk, and this is probably also not going to work. So let's see, system compile arguments. Let's see why this doesn't work now. By just executing it directly in the Hyperlambda playground. Object reference, not set an instance of an object. Thank you very much. Evaluate. Yeah, now it is, because I'm not actually passing in, I guess, a name. Tage. Let's try Tage here, and now it works. As you can see, the Hyperlambda slot returns title, CEO, phone, email. So what is wrong with our code here now? We have the get employee details. We are doing get employee details argument, singular form. Yet again, there's going to be a link in the description of this YouTube video to where you can find this code. You don't have to manually type it off everything. Let's now go back to our endpoint and try to invoke it with ARIA now. And ta-da! We now have an HTTP API endpoint that is dynamically actually executing our C# code and returning the return value of that executed C# code. What we probably want to do now, because I mean, after all, dynamically compiling an assembly, C# assembly like this, so we probably want to imply some intelligent caching, right? So we want to do if cache return tab not cache return tab io.file.exist colon slash modules slash cs-demo slash employees.dll cache return shift tab.lambda. Then we want to load the C# file, and we want to compile it. And instead of dynamically using the bytecode directly, we want to do io.file.save colon. Then we want to pass in this path and get value colon x colon at system.compile. Why? Because we're now saving the file. And what we now want to do, instead of loading up the result of the compilation process, we want to load up this particular path. And actually, we only need to do it once. Why? Because it's persistent. Well, actually, we kind of need to do it multiple times, because in theory, you might imagine that, I guess, doesn't matter. There are some additional tricks we can apply here to further improve caching. However, I'm not going to show them in this video. However, the problem here is that the application might actually recycle, at which point the assembly is not loaded into the app domain, yet still the assembly, the DLL actually physically exists on disk, implying the code won't work. So we could fix that problem too, but it's going to make sure that the YouTube video becomes too complex and too long, so I'm not going to do that. Let's see what happened here now. Bad IL format. So io.file.save, x system compile, load file, system plugin .load, io.file.load. Can't remember the exact syntax here, unfortunately. So let's try this guy and save it and try it again. And yet again, bad format probably, object reference, not set to an instance of an object. io.file.load. Binary, I think. Let's try again. This is obviously not my day. Unsupported type, system load plugin, passing string as file path or byte. Okay, string as file path. This should work. So why doesn't it? Save. And let's try it out just like this to see. Bad IL format. If not, IL file exists. Actually, I guess we refresh here, then we open expand modules again, then expand CS demo, and then we will see we have a DLL here. So let's delete that DLL and check out the get employee details again here. And then if not file exists, file load, and we need to do i.file.save.binary, of course. So now if we invoke the endpoint, hopefully it's going to be working. And as you can see, it now works. So now we do have an HTTP API endpoint that actually dynamically executes our code and caches the DLL in such a way that this particular compilation process will only execute if the DLL doesn't physically exist on disk, implying already being cached, you might say. And then it invokes get employee details from it, and it returns the result of the invocation of our C# code because of the fact of that this happens to be implementing the iSlot interface, which actually dynamically adds 3 nodes to our input, which is both input and output for an iSlot in HyperLambda. So now what we need to do, we need to go here, and then we filter, and instead of get employee, we're in our endpoints now, we filter on OpenAI, we expand it, and we move it into here, and now we want to filter on get employee. Why? Because we want to have only the API endpoints that's related to our newly created endpoint here. And as you can see, it returns 30 lines of JSON, and this is an OpenAPI specification. Here's the path, here's the operation ID, here's the description, and here's the single parameter it takes. Now we can copy this URL, and we can go to ChatGPT, and we can create a new GPT. Now what we want to do, we want to click configure here, we want to go to the bottom, we want to create a new action, and we want to import from URL, paste in our URL to our OpenAPI specification here, click import, at which point, ta-da, we have now connected our GPT with, and I guess we can format the code here. Should be like a button here to format the code, but it doesn't show for some weird reasons. Doesn't matter, it's valid OpenAPI specification. Now what we need is privacy policy, AINIRO. I'm just going to use the one we have at AINIRO.io and paste it in here. And we could add authentication if we want to. I don't have authentication on this particular endpoint, so it's meaningless. So we're basically done. Now we can go back here and give our GPT a name. C# demo, invoking AINIRO Cloudlet API endpoint. I guess that was way too long name, so let's just call it C# demo and use this as an exception instead. And we have an action, and we have all these other things. And now get me the phone number of Tage. And remember, we did 2 lovers in our C# code, so you can write Tage any ways we want. We cannot write his full name, right? Because we have a simple switch case thing going on inside our C# code, but actually this is going to return the result of our C# code, hopefully with a little bit of luck, unless something goes wrong. So let's have a look at what ChatGPT comes out with now. With a little bit of luck, it should return 91, 91, 91, 91, I think, and as you can, well, 92. And as you can see, it returns his phone number, his title is CEO, and it returns his email address. And that's it. And we've now connected our own custom GPT built through chat.openai.com/GPTs with our own C# code that is dynamically compiled and executed on the fly inside of our cloudlet. And we did it all in, I don't know how many minutes, 20 minutes or something. Anyways, thank you for watching. There's a link in the description to this YouTube video to where you can download the code. Please remember to like the video, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please comment. YouTube loves that stuff. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.